Can we understand? Do people understand what we witnessed today from Simone Biles and from McKayla Maroney and from Raisman, sitting at the witness table, discussing, sharing, testifying to the trauma inflicted by Larry Nassar, things that Simone Biles hasn't even told her mother she testified to today on Capitol Hill. And not just an elite gymnast, the greatest gymnast of all time. And Jason Johnson, thanks for coming through, man. Like, I think about how, as we know, a system cannot fail those it was never intended to protect. And our system, our culture, our society does not value women.
Right.
And I'm floored, I'm flabbergasted how, but I guess I shouldn't be because of what I just said, by how the FBI could not only turn a blind eye, but actively help to cover up Larry Nassar's abuse. Like, who's watching the watchers? So, Jason, you know how government works. You've seen 1 million Capitol Hill Senate judiciary hearings, right? How realistically can we expect for Larry Nassar's co-predators, co-conspirators, or the people who aided and abetted in his abuse, how can we realistically expect them to be held accountable?
We can't. What did we see happen with Sandusky? I mean, everyone who I know who's associated with Penn State says that stuff ran a lot deeper than we heard about. We heard about 2 names, and that was it. One thing I've always said about sexual abusers, I've done talks, I've done conferences. I know people who are advocates for abuse victims from pedophilia and everything else like that. They are a nest. They're like roaches. There's never just one person engaged in that behavior. There's always half a dozen people backing them up, assisting them, providing the lives, also using them to get access to those young people. I don't care if it's Sandusky. I don't care if it's Jared from Subway. You know that there were other people involved. So it's not just a matter of not holding his co-conspirators responsible, but it's also not shining a light on the entire system that allows this to happen. And I want people to understand like how deep this is, how this connects to the Olympics, how this connects to Simone Biles not wanting to go out and necessarily compete this year and having a lot of mental difficulty with it because she had been holding this nonsense together. Nassar wasn't just a regular doctor. He was one of the most important doctors in one of the most important aspects of the American Olympics. This would be like Michael Jordan coming forward in a teary-eyed press conference to say that the trainer that Phil Jackson assigned him to sexually molested him.
Yeah.
That's how bad this is. And that's how people need to see it.
Yeah.
You know what? You just spoke to a point that I don't think we can say often enough or loudly enough. I think it's an excellent point. We go back, anybody who was critical of Simone Biles during the Olympics, think about some of the commentary you heard there. Think about what she said today. Doesn't it all make sense? I'm going to advocate for myself because at my most vulnerable moment, at my weakest moment, nobody was there for me. I am more important than whatever you have going on here. I think that was powerful, what she did today. Did that really jump out at you, Doc?
Yeah, it did, but it always infuriated me because we talked about this on the show, guys. Like, I was thinking about this. We were all thinking about this at the Olympics. She didn't even want to compete this year. And imagine having to go back and perform for the very same people that abused you. I've always said in that sort of larger sense, you know, this is the Chris Rock joke, right? Like black people's relationship with America is like that uncle who used to abuse you but paid for you to go to college. Like, we always have that conflicted relationship with this country. This is specific, right? She was competing to bring honor, prestige, and money to American Olympics that had left her to be abused and molested. I can't imagine the kind of mental fortitude that it takes to do that.
Well, not just that. I mean, you're talking about somebody, this is the most accomplished and decorated gymnast in history who achieved those things and accumulated all those medals while being abused. She talked about how he was abusing her in competition. You know, he abused her. They were in Tokyo for a competition and he molested her. So she was, I mean, again, I don't want to trivialize this very real experience by even connecting sports, but understand what I mean when I say this, because this is life and death, and this is the everyday thing, unfortunately, for so many people. But she was, if she wasn't already the greatest, she was doing what she's done while being molested.
Right.
They were doing, excuse me, I don't mean to just minimize it or just limit it to Simone Biles. They were doing it while being molested and by being failed by this system. It was just sickening. And it was so powerful. This is one of the biggest sexual abuse scandals in United States history. And at the forefront of it are women who competed on behalf of the United States. This is no different than how the United States constantly fails our veterans, constantly fails our frontline workers, fails law enforcement. See January 6th, same category.
Well, and here's the other thing. It's like the level of psychological pain and difficulty these people had to go through. You can't just throw it all on one guy, right? There's not one Jack Ruby. There's not just one person. You know there's multiple people involved. But that never seems to happen in this country. We never pull the thread on the multiple people who are involved in this. It's always, let's find the bad guy, wrap it up. It's 3:55 p.m., law and order, we got to be done, right? That's the problem. And what you're going to have happen is, Simone Biles will have therapy and she's got everything going for her for the rest of her life. But think about the hundreds and hundreds of other young women and men who have been subjected to this kind of behavior, and they're not going to get that help. And they are scarred and they are damaged and they were abused by multiple other people. Heads should roll for this. But you know what? Just like heads haven't rolled for January 6th and heads didn't roll in Penn State, no one else is really going to get held accountable. That's the crime of all.
Meanwhile, he barely paying the money that he owes. He barely paying his bills from prison. Go ahead, Michael. We got to get to California before we go.
And I'm telling you, Doc, we will continue to talk with you about this as you come on. I know this is a topic that there's a lot more news there for us to really analyze and to scrutinize in some cases. I'm going to ask you quickly about California. For a while, I thought Gavin Newsom was going to be out of office, but he won in a landslide over Larry Elder. There's a story or 10 right there in that sentence I just spoke. But what stood out to you about California in that recall election?
Well, you know what?
We got 2 minutes, Doc.
I'm not entirely shocked, right? Because the moment this became a race between Gavin Newsom and Larry Elder, it was done. It was finished. Or as someone tweeted, elder abuse, right? He got beat down. And he got beat down because the guy was crazy and racist and sexist and not even remotely competent. Having a gorilla throw garbage at him on Venice Beach was the least embarrassing thing that could have happened to him throughout the race. So I think, though, the most important thing for people to remember, this is not an indicator of weakness of Democrats. You can basically put together any kind of recall you want in this state as long as you have enough money.
Yeah, and wishful thinking that Larry Elder would go away.
Yeah, so you said it's not a referendum on 2022. So it's just pretty much Newsom versus Elder. Is that what you're saying?
Once it became Newsom versus Elder, this is the thing I always told people. I used to say this about Bernie Sanders all the time. Donald Trump, the reason Donald Trump lost in 2020 is because it was a referendum on him. If you are in office, you always want it to be a competition between you and the other person because you can win that battle. You can talk about what you've done. If it becomes a referendum on whether you've done a good job, it's the same thing in your dating life. It's like, hey, girl, I don't want you to think about whether I'm a good boyfriend. Think about how better I am than the brothers hitting on you right now, right? If you can make that argument, you might be better off. It's me versus the field. I can beat the field.